OK, let's talk about this toilet training now, because last week a new poll by teachers revealed more children than ever. They start primary school still wearing nappies. Some teachers are claiming that parents are too busy to teach these youngsters basic skills in life, like, you know, putting on their own coat, for
getting
instance.
dressed and undressed for PE, and how to sit and eat at a table.
Put on ties, tie their shoelaces, all that sort of thing.
So the question, of course, is whose job is it to teach these social skills and development? Is it solely down to parents, or do schools actually have a part to play when the children get to reception? Well, one woman who believes that parents are to blame for failing our children is parenting expert, that's Liz Fraser. And then there's Katharine Birbalsingh. She's a head teacher. She believes schools have an enormous part to play. Welcome to you both. I have to say, I kind of sit on the fence on this one. I hate sitting on the fence, but I
Why?
kind
How
of
could
think...
you sit on the
because
fence?
I do think, yes, of course you should teach your children how to eat properly, get dressed, and by the time they get to school. But the fact of life is, a lot of parents don't. I'm not sure, it's not a majority, but a lot of parents don't. So therefore, it's not the child's fault. Someone's got to help them. So school is the next place, I suppose. Isn't it, Katharine?
Well, I think so. I mean, of course, parents should be doing what's right by their children, but unfortunately there are some families, sometimes because they don't know what to do, sometimes they are too busy, sometimes they have 3, 4 jobs, several children, it can be difficult. And I do think that schools have a part to play in this. They can bring a coordinated approach and involve families and help to support them in doing the right thing by their children.
How much experience did you see of this when in your school?
Well, of course, I was at secondary level, so nappies weren't an issue. But you can imagine if they are in nappies at age 5, then what happens to those children later?
71% of teachers polled working with 3 to 5-year-olds had some of them had to put on parent workshops to help with toilet training. Liz?
I'm astonished to be sitting next to a school head teacher who's using things like too busy, don't know what to do, where we're talking about teaching a child how to go to the toilet by the age of 4 or 5. There are so many issues in this one. As you said, Ruth, I mean, you know, we do understand that many parents aren't doing this and therefore someone's got to pick up this gap in the education. But, I mean, how have we possibly got to a point where parenting, the role, the job of parenting has become devalued to such an extent that there are that many parents, as we're hearing in this report, who have so little pride in themselves and so little sense of duty to do these basic things for their children.
Rightly outraged, but things aren't going to change by sending them back. Well, they can't change if these people don't know what to do.
Yeah, but they can change, Eamon, and what we mustn't do is accept this. What we mustn't do is condone this.
Why can't we be conciliatory? I mean, I'm listening to what Katharine has to say. It may not be what we all want to hear, but at least things will progress and change if schools
I mean, of course, I agree with what Liz is saying. Having said that, I mean, at secondary school level, I'm opening up a school in September in Tooting, Michaela Community School, and I'm going to personally do home visits to every single family before we start in September. And I'm doing that precisely because I know some families need that bonding, they need that support. Or we're going to have an extended day, for instance, that goes until 5 o'clock. And that's because when they get to secondary school level, some of them end up at 3:30 getting into all sorts of nonsense, and families are working.
But then if you were setting up that school now at primary level, if you went on a home visit and the parents said to you, oh, sorry, he's still in nappies, I haven't got time, I've got 3 other kids, I'm busy, he still wets himself and he doesn't know how to use a knife and fork, would you just accept that and say, well, they're busy?
Of course not. Of course
they're
not.
working hard.
Then
it
sounds
like that is what's happening now.
How do you support them? How do you... Sometimes they don't know, so you can put on parenting classes. Parenting classes, often schools are worried about putting on parenting classes because they don't want to insult families. But in fact, what you find is that parents turn up in droves. They're desperate for some help.
But you see, this is part of the whole... This is everything that I've written about for the last 6 to 7 years is all about this, about valuing parenting and about putting it back and saying this is a really important job. I think we're in such a culture now.
I'd love to be a stay-at-home mum. I'd love to have the time to be at home, but I have to go to work, especially with the economy as it is now. My husband's lost his job.
You've no time to teach your child how to go to the loo.
Well, listen, we are in such a throwaway culture now, and I think that children have become a part of that. Actually, people think, well, I'd like a child. Well, now I don't really want to take responsibility. And not only that, it is so embarrassing for the child involved, that poor child who is not nappy trained. Also, it is incredibly demeaning to the teacher, a qualified teacher whose job is not to wipe my child's bottom.
Well, if you listen to Katharine, if you listen to what Katharine's having to say, surely you're going to bring up a new generation that will have those parenting skills.
I worry that what you're actually doing is not you particularly, but if we send the message to the class of 35 school children that it's okay to absolve your responsibility and pass it on to someone else, be it the school, the police, the government, whoever it is, that someone will always pick up the pieces that you haven't done, and I look the other way to that, and I think that all those children sitting in that class who know that if little Johnny comes in and he's not dry, don't worry, someone else will sort it out. I would much rather that those children saw that I don't know if you can send him home or say to the parents, this is, you know, you literally cannot send your child to school if they don't know how to sit down and use a toilet.
But what Liz is saying there, I agree
where they
with.
won't offer you a place.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
why should they be allowed in the class?
That kind of hardcore approach,
It's quite hard,
but I agree with that. In fact, that is a way of supporting parents by insisting on high standards in school,
But then
as we will do.
It is help. I suppose you're saying you're trying to help the parents, but by doing that, the child is suffering because you're saying you can't come to school yet because your mum or dad haven't taught you how to go to the toilet.
That's true, but then if it encourages the parents, but you do have to put in some support at the same time so that they know how to do it. And then you insist, you keep your standards high, and the child can then benefit from that. And you build a relationship. You see, I do think children benefit from a coordinated approach between the school and the family.
Certainly, yeah.
And
it's the place where they spend most of their time,
I think I am such a supporter of education and school and society and teachers and what they have to do, but I think you've got to sometimes look at it differently. In my life, in a war-torn Northern Ireland, school was my oasis. It just took us away from the reality of what was happening outside. And it gives you your moral standing, it gives you your goals, your objectives, it makes you a better citizen. There were lots of things that weren't there on the curriculum, teaching you geography, mathematics, and whatever. And sometimes you think, you can make better citizens through schools, surely.
Well, you hope so.
absolutely.
It's a huge part of the school.
It's not just about teaching them as such. It's about providing an environment at school, at my school in September, for instance, rather than have kind of canteen long tables that they would eat at. They'll have a round table where they sit and they talk to each other. Now, not all children get to benefit from that at home because their parents leave them money for Kentucky Fried Chicken.
But can I make one final point, which is I think we have to be very careful to associate between punishing parents and saying you've been a bad parent, and actually it's the opposite of that. It's giving them a sense of self-worth, and it's giving parents something to feel valuable. It's not about saying you've been a really bad parent. It's about saying, look, why don't you just sort this out with your child? You teach them how to sit around. I know a lot of them are not going to do that, but so much of parenting and family life seems to be that people just don't have any pride in that anymore.
But I think I like you saying, Katharine, about the parenting classes. I think that's a great idea, but who's funding it? Most local councils or education,
society's losing out if it doesn't
funds.
fund. That's why I'm saying I think you've got to look upon this different way. I think people underestimate just how lacking some people are out there, whether as individuals, as single parents, as family units, whatever. They're just people who opt out of society, and it is bad. Somebody has then got to show the right way, and why shouldn't it be schools?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think schools do have a very important part to play, but of course what Liz is saying is also right. Everyone has a part to play.
There was a teacher here saying, I currently have 3 incontinent children in my reception class. I have to change them up to 9 times between them, 9 times a day. This means the education of the other children.
Exactly.
So if you're the parent of the other children, and that's a dilemma for a teacher because it's a caring profession as well. So you think, this poor child, I need to help them, but meanwhile the rest of your class are missing out, aren't they?
That's awful.
Look at some of the highlights in this report. One 5-year-old wearing nappies and has to clean up after a child who soiled themselves every day. This is the teacher. She's got a child in her class that has fizzy pop from her baby bottle and her teeth look like black pegs. 5-year-olds unable to speak in proper sentences. Instead, they say things like, give pencil. And more and more children whiz kids on computers but can't open or read a book.
Yes.
We have completely lost the plot.
I totally agree with
children, I think.
About.
But it's so hard to reverse. It's so hard to reverse because, exactly as you were saying, it just goes down one generation to the next, to the next. Where has it come from that it's now okay that children are turning up at primary school, they don't know their names? I remember this came out in a report about 4 or 5 months ago.
Why would you object to parenting classes or teaching
I don't
skills?
object at all to parenting classes.
But you object to schools taking on part of that role.
No, I don't object to that at all. I think if there's a gap there, it's got to be filled somewhere. But the point is that we need to address why the gap is there. Why is that gap there? And how can we help parents to not have that gap? How can we get to those parents who don't know how to feed a child, who don't know how to talk to a child? In that survey about the children not knowing their names, I remember a woman was interviewed and they said, look, why don't you talk to your child? Because I'm big on talking to children, big on talking generally. And they said, why don't you talk to your child? And her answer honestly was, he doesn't talk to me, so I don't talk to him. You know, at that level, and she's one of many people that we have totally
But then that mother
lost.
needs help to learn
She
to communicate,
needs a
doesn't
lot
she?
of help.
So,
a lot of people need a lot of help.
Yes.
It's a really hard one to undo.
Well, we always want to know what you think. It is it's a big one. You don't solve that in 5 minutes of us talking, but it's got you all thinking, I'm sure. Who do you think is responsible? Parents of the school, bit of both. Love to know what you think. Matt's in the hub waiting for your calls and comments today.